Hi everyone, I am Yolanda and I am locating cozy, and thanks for coming back to my channel. And today I have a special guest. In my previous video or vlog, I actually talked about the experience and how I feel like people are sleeping on Zaragoza, Spain. It's like this well-kept secret. I did also say that I was going to have a very special knowledgeable guest come on for part 2 of this, and that would be my favorite youngest child, Keila. Welcome, Keila.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So this is really cool because, yeah, I'm interviewing my child right now. All right, this is pretty cool. But I just felt like she would be able to bring some better insight about Zaragoza, about Spain overall and her experience since she's been here since 2016. But just her experience overall in Zaragoza. And also I just felt like there were some items that I pointed out on my last, that I forgot to point out on my last vlog about why you should check out Zaragoza. So here we have Keila. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing a professional interview, okay? Right, and then I'll be silly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a bit about yourself? Like, how did it happen? How did you leave me crying in Houston, Texas, when you decided to move to Spain? Yeah, tell me all about that.
So, yeah, I've been, let me go back to where all of that started. I've always really liked, been interested in different cultures, and living in Houston, I remember as far back as like elementary school, when I would hear students or friends speak in Spanish, I just really wanted to know what they were saying. Not because I needed to know what was happening, but I was just so curious that there's these words, this way of communicating, meaning other languages, that I'm not able to, I'm missing out on connecting with people, I guess is what it was. And so when I got to middle school, I started studying Spanish, and high school, I've been studying Spanish since I could study Spanish. And I took it more seriously than I took most things as a kid. You know, in the midst of me doing all kinds of, being a teenager things, I was still pretty serious about Spanish. I remember making a conscious decision that I'm not going to have an American accent when I speak Spanish. There's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to make sure that I sounded as close to native as possible. These things, they don't matter, but they were just all, I think the journey started way, way back. Anyways, fast forward to college. I studied a few things, but I got my degree in Spanish. It was one of my degrees. And with that, I was looking for a way to leave the country and live in a different place. And I didn't know how to do that. And so I was doing a lot of research about South America, which I wanted to go to a country that spoke Spanish. And it was difficult because a lot of the programs that I saw, because I didn't want to I couldn't fathom the idea of just leaving the country on my own, never having left the country or not having experienced that sort of thing. So at that time, that was not fathomable to me. So I looked for programs where they would like help me with the whole process. The thing is, a lot of those programs, the study abroad programs, you have to pay for, and then you're there not doing anything, or you're just studying. But I was a full-time student and a full-time employee the entire time that I studied, and so the idea of going somewhere to not working and having to spend money was just like absurd to me. So I kind of gave up on the idea for a while, and then lo and behold, my last semester of college, I ended up taking a class on Spanish, as in Spain, culture and art, literature and art, and my teacher announced to us that they were going to have someone coming to speak about a program in Spain that you get paid to teach English for. And I was just like, oh, that's perfect. I actually still wasn't super excited about it because I had a class at the same time that person was coming to talk to us. And so I decided to kind of just not go. But then I went to that class that day, and there was a sign on the door that said, class is canceled today. And so I ran over to the meeting, and the rest is history. I got here to Spain and never looked back.
Yes, she did. So, okay, so I'm going to go back and point on 2 things, and I'm going to, I guess, maybe to put on record that the one of the disputes that we've had is I remember, okay, here's my story. I remember, I think Keila, you were in the 6th or 7th grade, somewhere around there, where I had made some decision in my brain that I wanted you to take a second language through school. For you, I actually had said to you at some point, I want you to take a second language, whether it's Spanish or Russian or French or whatever. Do you remember that at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Not at all. So I like to take, some kind of, I like to pat myself on the back for encouraging her or saying that you have to learn another language. Now, we did end up moving to an area in Houston, and her friends and her whole, her community, consisted of a lot of people that did speak Spanish, but I like to feel like I did jumpstart that, and making that demand. She doesn't quite remember it, so that's okay. But also, I remember when you were in, I want to say the 10th grade, where the first time where you wanted to go and do a study abroad for a few months while you were in high school. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I remember wanting to support that. Unfortunately, we were way up in Spring, and the place where you had to go to, one, it costs money. Again, as she stated, you don't just go and they send you. There's no scholarship. You actually have to fund your own way to get to this other country where you're helping this community and being in an immersion culture. You're immersed in the culture. But the two problems was single mother and just coming from the north side and trying to get to another part of Houston to make sure that she was able to, I guess there was ongoing, you had to do 2 or 3 months of prep where you had to go to these different meetings once a week or something like that. And it just wasn't feasible. So I'm happy to know that I can kill her dream then. So she had her focus, she had her dreams, and just because something sets you back, or maybe the first initial idea of what you want to do doesn't come to fruition, she still made it happen. So now we're here in Zaragoza. Keila moved to Zaragoza. Can you tell us what it was like the first 30 days in Zaragoza? I want to say 90 days, but let's start with the first 30 days that you're in Zaragoza, Spain. Here you are. What happened?
The first 30 days were nerve-wracking. It was an emotional roller coaster. I cried myself to sleep a couple of times. There was a lot of doubt involved. It was not easy. I think a lot of times people think about, living in a different country, it's all vacation, but it is not the same thing as going on vacation. I mean, vacation sometimes when you go to some places is very difficult in itself. But when you have, I just remember I was very excited, and I mean, even before I left, I was already on the emotional roller coaster. Oh my God, I'm leaving everything that I know, everything I'm comfortable with, all the people that know and love me. I'm leaving everything behind, and then also the not knowing what's gonna happen. You really can't plan for where you're gonna live if you've never been to this place. How are you gonna plan that? A lot of times people try and set up housing beforehand. That's a really great way to get scammed. Because you usually have to put some sort of down payment. You're working through some agency, and there are agencies here that hunt for people like that, expats who are looking to make sure they're as comfortable as possible, and so they'll pay the extra money. And that's fine if you want to pay the extra money, but a lot of times they will just leave you high and dry, and you still have to do the exact same steps that everybody else has to do. So my first 30 days were really just me coming here, getting to, mind you, I found a roommate online who was also doing the program. She was the only other Black girl that I had seen in the groups that was coming to Zaragoza, and I was like, hey, let's be roommates. And that worked out really well. I spoke more Spanish, so I did feel like there was a little bit more responsibility that was lying on me. But I'm sure she was going through her own stuff as well, so not to minimize that. Anyway, so my first 30 days was, we were in a hotel. We started in a hostel because hostels can be great, but Zaragoza is really not a touristic place, and it really wasn't a touristic place in 2016. And so the hostels that I've seen were more like places that men who have been kicked out of their houses go to. That was the vibe. It smelled like cigarettes everywhere. It was just like lined with dust. It was a very, very sad place. And so we left. I had to call my dad and ask him to fund us going to a hotel and staying there indefinitely until we found a flat. Thank God for that resource, because I really came here without planning anything financially also. So with that, we just looked around. We were online just trying our best to try and find anything we could on like Idealista, which is just a find an apartment platform. And we ended up finding a place through, we're English teachers, and so we each had a school that we're working at, and there was like a coordinator who was working with us to get us set up in school, but if they could help us outside, they did as well. And so my coordinator ended up connecting us with someone who let us stay in their flat that they had in the city. So that was really great. We were in like a prime area. I didn't even realize it at the time. Now that I've been here for a while, I'm like, wow, this area seems like inaccessible. What is the word?
Inaccessible.
Inaccessible. That feels wrong. Anyways, that's not the point. It feels like one of those areas that, I don't have enough money to live there, but we were living there and it just didn't even faze us. We didn't know the city. We didn't know where we were. But yeah, it was a great flat. We were very lucky to have gotten that. We didn't want to look anymore. I was very lost because I learned Spanish. I studied Spanish and I still didn't know what was going on because the Spanish here is very different. And with the level that I had, I could read a novel, I could write an essay in Spanish, but I really hadn't done any conversation, like true conversation and living in Spanish. And so I was not able to adjust my ear to different accents, and that was really difficult. They may as well have been talking Mandarin to me. I just didn't understand. But with each activity that I did, each task that I accomplished in Spanish, my confidence and my level of Spanish increased exponentially with each of those experiences. So when we talk about immersion, that's what we're talking about, right? Because there's only so much that you can do just from practicing and pretending that you're, in a situation. When you actually have to do the thing, open the bank account, find the apartment, pay your taxes, then you're really getting use of the language.
So I'm going to go back and touch on a couple of things. Well, one is, I think this is going to be a two-part because we want to talk about, the goal of this was to actually talk about all the things Zaragoza, but just to actually recapping and actually going back on that journey of Keila moving to Zaragoza, it's important for people that are considering for various reasons, if they're coming here to teach, or if they're coming, to retire or to become a digital nomad. But this speaks to her experience directly, which I've heard about. As a mom, now, me as a mom, being back in the States, two things happened. One is the day that she left, I dropped her off at the airport, and my mother actually called me as I was driving to work from dropping her off at the airport, and my mother, called me and she was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And I just boo-hooed. And so I had literally given my job. This was back in the day when I still went to the office. So I literally told my upper management and some of my peers at my job, I told them, I think the time that Keila told me was maybe 6 months before you left.
I remember I was at the end. So May?
It was May?
It was the end of my last semester.
Why do I believe it was 6 months? Okay, maybe not. Okay, so it was May, and then you left in September. Mm-hmm. So whatever the time was, whenever she told me that she was leaving, I literally told my job, my daughter leaves the country on this particular day, and I'm not going to be right. I don't know how I'm going to act, but I'm not going to be well. So just giving you heads up, I don't know where my mindset's going to be. So after dropping her off and, having the support from my mother of, helping me get through the first, 15 minutes of her being gone. She hadn't even left the country yet.
Because I went to New York, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 'cause she went to New York to stay there. And then her and her new roommate to be, y'all flew out together, right?
Yeah.
Right. So anyways, I'm at work and I'm thinking, oh, you're okay. And so then I go out to lunch and I go to Salada and I'm like, okay, it's not so bad. You'll be fine. And I go to Salada and I pick up my food and I'm headed back to my car. And I don't know if I was headed back to my car or if I got out of my car as I was going back into my building at work. And that's when it hit me The air just felt different. The air just felt different with her not even being in the city and knowing that she was leaving the country. I had a complete breakdown. It was bad. So at the time, yes, it was very emotional. I'm still, being the cheerleader and, and being as supportive as possible for my daughter who's leaving the country and leaving and not coming back for a year. Not like I'm going on vacation for a week or so. But also the first time that she called me with one of her challenges of being in Zaragoza and being in this other country where I couldn't, even if I wanted to, I wanted to, but even if I couldn't actually get to her to do anything. In my mind, I'm like, these people are upsetting my baby. In my mind, I wanted to jump on a plane and go beat somebody up in Spain. That's not realistic. So all I could do at the time was just listen and be there for her, and just listen. That's all I could do. But you survived. You made it through. You figured some things out. Yeah, she's a champ. Hold on, let me.
I want to, as you're talking about this, I'm remembering like some really key things in my first like week or so, and I would love to mention them if that's okay.
Okay.
So a couple of challenges, I kind of went on a tangent on something else, I think, on the question, but a couple of challenges that I remember would be, first of all, just a couple of things that I remember after the hotel situation. One of the challenges was eating. So back home, you can go anywhere and eat whenever you feel like it, and because we weren't on like a actual schedule, and really I'm not on a schedule even back in the United States of like I have to eat at this time. I eat when I'm hungry, and that's pretty much it. And I have anyway, for reasons, because I worked in a kitchen before I left, I have a weird eating schedule anyway. I've never been someone who's like, I need to eat breakfast at this time, lunch at this time. I'm just like usually just constantly picking on stuff. So I never really got hungry. Anyway, so when I was here for that first week, we would try and go out to eat, and you've been walking around, you're exhausted, and you finally go somewhere to sit down to eat, and they would tell us the kitchen is closed. So my first thought was, is this racism? Like, are they like not serving us because we're black? That was my initial thought. That wasn't the case. It's just that they have very specific times for eating certain things here, and not every, but most restaurants really abide by that, especially in places that are really not touristic. If it's a place that's really catered to Spanish people, they don't have a reason to be open at noon for lunch, because nobody here eats lunch at noon. And so I'm sure y'all, if you've done any research about Spain or anything like that, you already know that they eat lunch around 2 o'clock. That's when lunch starts, between 2 and 4 o'clock. And then there's like breakfast at, in the early mornings, but it's just like a piece of bread. Nobody's like sitting down for like a full breakfast. And
we tried to find it.
Yeah. And then dinner's at like 8 or 9. So the restaurants start opening at 8 for that. And so places will be open, but it's really just for you to have a coffee or a tea or something. And I just didn't understand. I didn't have the vocabulary to understand that. And I didn't have the mindset to understand that either, because I come from a place where customer service means yes always to the customer. And so I'm just like, what do you mean you won't serve? Just give me it. If you have a kitchen,
just give me.
Turn it on, turn the stove on and cook it for me. I didn't talk to anybody like that, but that was just kind of the mindset that I'm used to coming from, where it's always a yes for us, and here they're like, no, that's just not how we do it.
And they don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't care that you're upset. But all that to say, I was very hungry on top of being emotional and exhausted and everything else, and that was it just opened me up for just emotional breakdowns on a regular basis, because I wasn't understanding. It took us a while to understand what the schedule was. I don't feel like I ate well until we got our apartment and I finally went grocery shopping for the first time.
Do you think it would have been harder, or maybe you experienced less pain points since you actually had some idea of the Spanish, of the language?
You would think, but honestly, I just think I can't even imagine having come here with less Spanish. Everybody else I knew, or a lot of the people over here that I knew, none of them spoke any Spanish at all, and so they did it, and that was their experience, and they were fine. But because I came here thinking that I was going to be so prepared because I knew Spanish, and then coming to find out that didn't help me at all, and I was so lost, even with the Spanish that I did know, I just think about how lost people must have felt without any of that. But of course, like there's just different levels of difficulty or, you know, challenges, different types of challenges that everybody faces when they make a move like that. And you just adjust. Like we as people are flexible and we adjust to everything. So everybody can do it.
So I'm going to put something out here because I remember when I first came to Spain to visit Keila in 2018. I could be wrong, but I felt like because maybe some of the struggles that you had, even knowing the language when you came here, that you were really super concerned about how I communicated with people being here and not speaking a lick of Spanish at all. I felt like maybe you were a little bit stressed because I wasn't saying something right. It's like when we were in Barcelona, when we met up in Barcelona, and I was, you know, I was telling her, I was trying to tell the cab driver something, but I'm looking back at her. I'm like, what's, you know, I was trying to relate something, and she was like, look at him and say that, and I was like, why? I'm talking to you. I'm not realizing that I'm actually talking to this person that doesn't speak Spanish. Do you think that you were maybe a little overly concerned about me communicating with people not being able to speak Spanish when I first came to visit?
I guess I'm confused by your example that you gave, because it sounds like the example you gave was...
I was doing it wrong. Okay.
No, it sounds like the example that you gave was me encouraging you to actually utilize your Spanish as opposed to depending on me.
Oh, okay.
So,
and I don't do that. When I'm with her, I don't do it. When I'm by myself, when I'm by myself and just getting around Madrid, Zaragoza, I figure it out. But if I'm with her, she's like my crutch, and I automatically turn to her like, what they say? That is an automatic. So yeah, I guess initially I thought, I felt like maybe I was embarrassing you because I didn't quite get it right when I first came to visit, and or maybe there was some, like maybe a slight stressor of me not being able to communicate, or maybe I'm wrong. I could be completely wrong. But did you feel that at all, like when I came to visit?
I don't. Being stressed about you communicating. I don't recall anything like that.
Okay.
But I think that if I have someone here who's able to make it a little bit easier for me, then I definitely would take advantage of that. So if I can help you, then I can help you. But I mean, I feel like there was times where there's things that you do know to say or communicate, and you would look at me for it.
Yeah.
And then I would just say, I do that with anybody who's in a situation where they want to learn the language, or they say they want to learn the language, because that becomes a thing, a pattern, right? Like, so with my husband, he speaks English. He actually speaks very good English, but when he's with me, he wants to say it to me in Spanish, and then me say it to them in English. Or not all the time, but often he does that, and I'll tell him, like, say it to them because I know he can. So
okay, very nice. So I guess that goes both ways. It's like I do it when I'm trying to get something translated into Spanish, and I guess he does it for something sometimes, not all the time.
Yeah, I mean, if I know someone's level, I mean, it depends on the person, but if I know someone's level, the teacher in me wants to push them just to where I know that they can be at. Like, if you ask me, how do you say, I want water, and I tell you, and then you just look at the person and then go, water, I'm gonna say, why don't you say what I just taught you?
Quiero agua.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
See, I'm like a minus A1. Is that the level? A1 is the level, the beginning. I'm minus A1. So. But I will say, so after the first visit, it was amazing, and it was a game changer that I didn't even know was going to be changing my life going forward. But I did make the decision that I said, when I do come back next time, I want to get here and be in like the city or Madrid or whatever by myself for a couple of days before I would come and actually get my home base here, which actually came in handy. I'm very, very thankful. But no matter what, as much as I like to think that I'm learning Spanish, if somebody says something to me, all of a sudden I'm like, what? So, but I pick up on some things. So
I think you might be talking about more, not so much words, but like customs. I feel like with customs, there were things that I would try and explain to you that like are more or less common or like not acceptable here that maybe are normalized in other places or in the United States. I feel like, yeah, like what would I'm trying to think of like, I mean, I know that your level is very almost nothing for Spanish, so I wouldn't be trying to correct you on your Spanish. I would be encouraging you to speak your Spanish. But with customs, there are a lot of things that just are different here that I would try and explain. Sometimes there's like resistance to that because you're just like used to how things are in the United States, and because you hadn't really like lived at all outside the United States. When I would tell you these things, I felt like you were under the impression that I was like embarrassed or stressing out or something, and it was me telling you that this is how you should do it, but it was really me telling you this is how it's done here. Like these things don't happen, or they don't do this here, they do this here, or this is common, this isn't common. And it's just, I mean, that I'm a resource, and so if I've already gone through the hassle of embarrassing myself or making a mistake that might be slightly offensive to someone else, why not just communicate it to you so you don't have to go through that? However, I do see value in doing things on your own, right? I've gone to many different places and embarrassed myself doing all kinds of things, and then I learned that way. But I think that might be more of this.
And I think that's true. That's true, because, you know, she'll tell me something or like discuss like how it's done, and I'll be like, well, I'm a tourist, so if I'm a tourist and you weren't here, I would still be making those mistakes. That was my mindset. Like, so it's okay. 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 So anything else before we go on to the next topic regarding Zaragoza, more detail on Zaragoza? Is there anything else you wanted to add about your experience upon moving to Spain initially? I
mean, that could be a whole
movie.
So yeah, but yeah, my first 30 days were just emotional. There was a lot of questions. I still question myself on a regular basis, like just checking in now, like, is this where you are meant to be? And the answer that I receive back from myself, the universe, whoever is your higher power, is always yes, even when things have gotten really difficult and I've been really tried. So, and I've continued to listen to that voice, and things are turning out okay.
So what we're going to do now is, thanks for joining. Again, I am Locating Cozy. Please do make sure that you hit that subscribe button and like this video and turn on the notification bells.